So you say you have 10,000 people on the platform?
10,000 artists on
And how
platform.
many people have applied?
We have a little bit over 40,000 on the wait list.
So how do you decide who gets on and who doesn't?
So the best way to get artists on the platform is to work with a distribution partner. So we use our distribution partners as like a KYC process. Since we are dealing with payments, there's a lot of logistical paperwork that goes into actually paying people daily. So assuming that they don't have a distribution partner, then it's like a 4 to 6 week process of getting them onboarded directly through Stripe.
Who's the distribution? Like distro kids, stuff like that?
Can't announce any of the distro partners yet, but yes, it's like the DIY distribution partners up to like your more premium distributors as well. And then labels as well, and like their subsidiaries as well.
Okay.
Is there a max number or an ideal number that we're looking for as a benchmark within the first year?
Honestly,
As far as like artists, users?
my number was 50,000 this year, right? I was like, I want to help 50,000 artists make their first $1,000 going direct to consumer. I think it's been a snowball effect in the last 3 months, where now we're on track to probably onboard over 1 million artists by Q3 of this year. And really just making sure that we have the infrastructure in place to really serve those artists. I think it's one thing to offer a tool, but if you don't have the tools to make sure that they're successful, it's not, we have partners that have millions of artists on their distribution channels that are like, we want to make everyone an even artist. And we're just like, no, let's start. We like the crawl, walk, run model as a company.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that, the relationship that we have with our artist partners is our priority number one. We have to do right by our artists before just trying to, push volume.
And do artists join free? Is it free to join?
100% free. So the platform is free. No subscription on the artist side or on the fan side.
So what's the plan for the company going forward? Is it to sell in a few years? What's the deal?
I think we're ways away before we think of like what the next stage of the platform. I think for me right now, the biggest priority has been how do we build something sustainable, right? I think building anything for a quick flip is never going to be worth it for anyone. I think we've had numerous conversations around acquisition with every partner the first person that comes to mind, we've talked to them. And I tell them the same thing. I think it makes more sense for us to build what we're building right now in an intentional way, before we even get to that point. I mean, I talk about it every quarter with our board, right? It's like, are we going for an IPO? Or are we going for an exit? I think let's help. If we do right by the artists on the platform, everything else will come, right? How do we help 50,000, 100,000 artists become the next Lil Russell,
Mm-hmm.
right? That can incubate and build sustainable careers without having to deal with the vanity metrics that the music industry has kind of fueled everyone to think that they need.
So do you envision it as a unicorn? Because I'm thinking from a subscription standpoint, it's like, all right, I know how many customers I have on a yearly basis, monthly basis. I can calculate that to get an evaluation. Or is it just, are we basing it on the amount of revenue that we're bringing in, right? $1 billion valuation, like what are we looking at?
I personally believe, and the data is showing, that we can grow the music industry's global revenue by 15 to 20% in the next 2 years. Based on the amount of consumer trends that we're seeing on platform and the amount of interest that we're getting from fans, but also the amount of artists who've been releasing music on streaming platforms for the past 10 years who can't even make $15 a month from streaming, but are coming to the platform and making tens and thousands of dollars. There's a whole market of artists that streaming doesn't really benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But now they can use their revenue and the community from even to help fuel their streaming, right? So they can build on two businesses. So, I mean, thinking of that in mind, 15 to 20%, I 100% believe even will be a unicorn.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Like you see legacy artists and they'll put out an album and it's, they only sold 8,000 units, or they only, on Billboard, and it's like, is that really an indication of their fan base? Whereas now, if they go direct, the 8,000, it's a different look.
And we do releases with legacy artists all the time, right? Like it's always incredible for me to work with an artist that like I was a huge fan of maybe 10 years ago, and they release on the platform, and the DSPs don't really care for anymore, right? Mm-hmm. They're not gonna end up on a Rap Caviar or Now Playing, but for us, we know that there's an audience. There's a couple thousand people who are willing to pay because those 1,000 or so people have stuck around for the last 10, 15 years of their career, and they end up making more money than they were going to generate off of streaming alone.
Yeah. And we can see if we look at ticket sales from shows, live shows, they're still performing. And so
100%.
there's still a play there where people are still engaged with the content that they're creating.
Yep. And you're seeing that now. I mean, you're seeing legacy, like think about hip hop in general. There's artists that can't tour in the States and sell 200 tickets, but they go to Europe and they're selling 1,000+ venues because the proximity isn't there, right? And there's these, people who have never seen X artist before in Germany, and all of a sudden they want to go and see that artist that they maybe listened to 10 years ago. That doesn't happen just in the States. And then you open up the world, right? There's only 32 global touring markets in the planet, only 10%. They're going back to that number of like 10% of the global population will only ever have proximity to their favorite artists. You open it up digitally and it opens up a new, without having to exert too much on the artist, right? I think the artists love even because it's not something else that they have to do. It's something that they were already going to do. They're just replacing their pre-save campaign with their Buy My Album campaign.
I appreciate it, my brother. So last question I have is like the bundle pack, right? Like how does that work? 'Cause like even with Nipsey, when he sold his album for $100, he had like merch involved. He had tickets to a show. So does your platform allow that, or is it just straight music?
Yeah, so we call them tiers on the platform. So most releases have anywhere between 4 to 5 access tiers. Sometimes it's pay whatever you want and you get all of them. We recommend that you price it out, right? So maybe it's $10 just to listen to the album, right? That's the minimum. $25 and you get a virtual release party. $50 you get a free t-shirt. $100 you get a FaceTime call. $1,000 I'll come perform the album in your living room, which we've done with this artist went through the platform and he sold a couple $1,000 tiers where he would go to people's houses and perform the album, which was crazy that we saw that on the back end. But yeah, you can do tiers. We don't necessarily call them bundles because you can't, for example, if you pay $1,000, you would get everything from 1,000 under, not just the one pack.
But how do you track that as far as the response? So the music, somebody pays for it, you're going to give them the music.
Correct.
But like that, you can't control that. So how do you navigate? Because like somebody's promises and they never do anything, right? And then they look back and they blaming you as a platform.
So all of that pieces is it's really, we connect the artist and the fan, right? Post transaction. So there is an open line of communication. The customer support email is the artist support email. Think of like a Shopify, right? We could start a Shopify store today and start selling, whatever we want to sell on there. We have to abide by that transaction. And then of course, that's really where the KYC process comes in with Stripe, where if an artist any refund gets refunded to the artist.